This video continues the discussion on the top 10 major nonconformities that were identified in third-party IATF 16949 audits in 2021. In the previous video, we looked at the top 5. We're now going to look at the nonconformities that are number 6 to number 10 in the ranking. So number 6 now we have is 8.5.1, which is an ISO 9001 requirement about the control of production and service provision. Why do you think we're ending up with so many nonconformities against this requirement, which is in the basics, is in the ISO 9001 requirement?
Yeah, which in itself probably tells a story and I think probably links back to the major that we talked about around process design outputs. But you're right, this is an ISO 9001 requirement, the basic requirement, the underlying requirement of control of production. And for sure, to see this many major nonconformities raised against this, for me, would indicate some kind of fairly serious weaknesses in how organisations are managing the risks that exist within their production environments.
Yeah, and I guess auditors would pick this requirement, 851, rather than the control plan requirement, 8511, if they see underlying systemic problems, not just related to the control plan, but the overall control of production.
I would agree. Yeah.
Okay. Number 7 then relates to an IATF additional requirement, 9.1.1.1, which relates to monitoring and measuring of manufacturing processes. Again, Devin, any insight as to why we see this in the top 10?
Yeah, so this is kind of interesting. We see this in the top 10, but within 9.1.1.1, there is a section that talks about maintain manufacturing process by the customer part approval process requirements. So once again, getting back to the PPAP requirements, verifying the process flow diagrams, PFMEAs, control plans. So it all stems really with that upfront or advanced quality portion of the manufacturing process. And we've seen this. This is a repeated issue throughout the list of these top 10 nonconformities.
Yeah. So I think that there's a lot of interrelationship within this top 10. I think you're right, Devin, that whereas 8511, for example, says we have to have control plans, 9111 makes it very clear we don't just have to have them, we actually have to implement them effectively and also make sure that we're maintaining the process capability requirements that we met at the initial product submission. So I think you're right there that we're looking at these clauses in isolation, but these clauses are all very much interlinked with each other. The next one, Niall, is 4.3.2, which is about customer-specific requirements. Now, I think this is going up the list of the top 10, and I know many organizations feel that this is becoming an increasing burden to try and meet customer-specific requirements. Where do you see this going?
There's no doubt, Paul, this is a sort of growing problem, shall we say, where customer-specific requirements, we're seeing more and more major nonconformities being raised. It's a complicated area, this. I think there's lots of confusion, and again, across every facet of the scheme in terms of customer-specific requirements and the difference between a customer requirement, which is a fundamental part of any audit. It's essential that auditors understand how organizations are understanding and integrating their customer requirements into their processes. But we've then kind of developed this other thing called customer-specific requirements, which frankly makes life that bit more complicated because we're almost allowing organisations to develop their own build-on requirements of the standard, which from a third-party point of view and from an organisational point of view adds an awful lot of complexity. And I am trying to get some traction on looking at this as we move towards Rule 6th edition, but it's a difficult one, Paul. And you know that we have a range of organisations within IATF, some of whom make their CSRs readily available. Others would not do that. Understandably, they see them as a sort of contractual thing between them and their suppliers, and they're made available to their suppliers, but they're not made publicly available. So it again makes life very complicated. So I'm not sure I'm really able to answer. Devin, I don't know if you want to chip in on this, but it's an area that I can assure you we are looking at, but quite how it will develop, I'm not too sure.
Just to add, Niall, I think we all know that it's going to be a main focus when we do rewrite this standard in the next couple of years. We will definitely try to consolidate those customer-specific requirements.
Yeah, and I'm sure the supply base would applaud that if we can harmonize requirements, it certainly makes it a lot easier, I think, for the first-tier suppliers to be able to integrate the requirements effectively. Yeah. Devin, I know you've been working with the OEMs about performance-related concerns. Now, that might relate in some way to Clause 9.1.2.1, customer satisfaction being in the top 10 major nonconformities. Can you maybe explain that if an IATF member does have a performance-related issue with one of their suppliers, how that process works and how that might link to this clause?
Yeah. Thanks, Paul. So as you know, a couple of years ago, I want to say 2018 or so, the IATF has really switched to certification meeting product quality, meaning the parts that leave your facility are meeting your customer requirements. And part of that, we have started using performance complaints, which have always been there from day one. We're just relying on them more. We're getting more and more feedback from our OEMs to make sure that the certified sites are building their products that meet their requirements, right? So as part of this, you're seeing more and more NCs written against 9.1.2.1, right? Customer satisfaction must be monitored. And obviously, if you're not meeting your customer expectations, customer requirements, you're going to wind up with one of these nonconformities.
Yeah, and we do have in Rules 5th that if an organization isn't meeting a customer-related performance target and there is no corrective action plan, the auditor's decision is taken away from them, that the Rules 5th says that shall be raised as a major nonconformity. So I think what you've said, Devin, and what I've added contributes to the fact that an IATF 16949 management system should be delivering product on time that meets the customer needs and expectations. And if it isn't, the organization has to have robust action plans. And then I don't think it's any surprise to any of the listeners now that we end up with contingency plans in the top 10. So that is number 10, 6.1.2.3. Maybe give your insight as to why we've seen this come into the top 10.
Well, I think there's no doubt that, what with the global pandemic, the contingency plan of an organisation has been brought to the surface because organisations have had to make some quick changes from a sort of business continuity point of view. So it's possible that that is one of the sources of these non-conformities. But the other one, I think, is probably some of the changes that we've seen to this particular clause. So some of the sanctioned interpretations. By the way, these sanctioned interpretations are all freely available. We'll try and put a link up to the website. But this one, 6.1.2.3, has had a number of sanctioned interpretations around cybersecurity. And again, I suspect that might also be a reason for this, being one of the top 10 major nonconformities.
Yeah, and I think probably just to add to that, Niall, some of the issues around material shortages in the supply chain and how organizations have dealt with those shortages. Again, that could be a potential reason that we see 322 major nonconformities raised against this requirement. So in summary then, at number 6 in the major nonconformity ranking list, we have control of production and service provision 8.5.1, which is an ISO 9001 requirement. Number 7, we end up with 9111, which is about monitoring and measurement of manufacturing processes. Number 8, customer-specific requirements, which I'm sure we're going to hear far more about as we go through 2022. 9.1.2.1, which is about customer satisfaction and ensuring that we are monitoring satisfaction levels with our customers. And then finally, partly maybe driven by the global COVID-19 pandemic and also by supply shortages, but as Niall said, also by sanctioned interpretations, we see contingency plan forming number 10 in the major nonconformity ranking list.